Good afternoon. This video is a tutorial for making the project from my pattern Goody Basket. The Goody Basket comes in two sizes. A large one holds a 10-inch paper plate and a small Goody Basket holds a 7-inch paper plate. Today we're going to be making the small basket, and let's get started. I'm going to start the base of my Goody Basket with my fabric laid out wrong side up. This is the right side of my fabric, this is the wrong side, and lay my lightweight batting, and I use Warm and Natural, along the top raw edge of the longest side of the fabric. Okay, I used my presser foot edge as a guide and moved my needle all the way to one side and just stitched several rows of straight stitching across the batting to anchor the batting to the fabric. I'm going to take my fabric now and place it right sides together and stitch a 1/4 of an inch seam all the way down this side and press the seam open. Okay, I've stitched all the way down this side, and I'm going to press the seam open. I'm going to fold my basket, fold my seam allowances together, and then I'm going to twist this fold it, until I have it folded so that I folded it into a tube. My quilting, the side that I've quilted, here's the side I've quilted, here's the inside. This is folded like this. The fold is down here. I'm going to stitch around this edge. Okay, here's where the batting is. Here was that fold. I've stitched a 1/2 inch all the way around, and I back stitched at the seam. This is a little bit hard to see because this is a sample, and so I'm using matching thread. Here's my batting edge, my raw edges. Here's my fold. You can see my quilting stitches. They're on the outside. So now I'm going to fold this up inside of here. Okay, I can feel the bottom of the batting. So I'm going to fold it so it's even with the bottom of the batting. Now if you look, you can see how this flap is folded up inside of here. Here's the outside where the quilted stitching is. Here's the fold. Here's the raw edge. So I fold it in like that all the way around. I'm going to press it a little bit, and then I'm going to stitch close to this edge. Okay, it's stitched all the way around here. Here's the part I turned to the inside. Here's the raw edge where the batting is, and if I pull this back out now, you can see I've created this little tuck right here, okay? See that? Okay, so now we're done with the basket for a while, so we're going to set the basket part aside. These cute little sunflowers are my filling fabric. I'm going to fold this right sides together, and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 of an inch down this side. I've stitched along this edge 1/4 inch seam, press the seam open, now I'm going to bring the raw edges together and just fold it and make it into a tube just like I did the other one. So now I've got the raw edges here and the folded side here. I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and stitch around here 1/2 inch from the fold. Okay, here's my folded side, and I've stitched 1/2 inch all the way around the fold, and I back stitched at the seam. Okay, here we are looking down into my little finished basket. Here's the quilting stitches and the outside of my basket. Here's the little pleat, and here's the little unpadded part. I'm going to take the raw edges of my filling. I'm going to find my seam allowance here, and I'm going to match this seam allowance to this seam allowance and tuck this inside of here. Your seam allowance after you've stitched is going to be to the outside. So once I get this in here, like this fits inside of here. So can you see what's going on? Inside, here's the outside, here's the filling. And you've got wrong sides together. I used the free arm on my sewing machine and stitched all the way around. Here's what it looks like on the inside, and when I pull it apart, we've got the seam allowance is now on the outside of the basket. We're going to cover that up in a little while with the band. So now, let's put on the band. I folded the band in half, right sides together, and pressed it. Then I took one corner, stitched in 1/4 inch, trimmed the edge, and when I turn it right side out, then I have a finished corner like this. Press that a little bit. Now, I'm turning my tube the other way around so that my filling is now on the outside. I'm going to locate my side seam, and I'm going to position my band so that the finished edge is against this seam. I'm going to pin and stitch all the way around using a 3/8 inch seam. I need to say this is the smaller of the two sizes, so if you're doing a larger basket, this seam allowance needs to be 5/8. Okay, I started stitching. Here's my finished edge of my band against my seam allowances. The fold of the band's out here, the raws are here, and I've stitched all the way around all of the raw edges through all the layers. When I get back to the finished part, I'm going to stitch about 1 inch past and just cut off the excess. The other thing I do is move this in a little bit so that these two edges aren't even. This is a little shorter than this one is, so that when I fold it over, I don't have to fight this being hidden, and that's not in the pattern. It's just a little bit easier way to do it. Now you can see when we pull the tube out again, and we fold the seam allowance down, or the band down, it's going to fold over the seam allowance and hide the seam allowance. And it just gives a little more bulk to the lip of the basket. By the time we add our boning, then it just stands out nice and stiff. And it's just a good way to hide all your seams and give a little more bulk right here to the edge of the basket where you want it. These are my handles. I folded them in half, wrong sides together. Then I brought in the raw edges to that fold line and pressed them again. Do that a little closer. Okay, here's the fold, right sides together and pressed, or wrong sides together and pressed. Then here's my raw edges folded in, and I did that to both handles. Now I'm going to lay the batting inside, and the batting's a little shorter than the handles, so when we fold them in under the band, there's not quite so much bulk. So I'm going to put each one of these in here, And here's a little trick that's also not in the pattern. This is Steam-A-Seam, and it's in a little strip, and it's used for hems. And so by peeling the paper backing off it, I can put it in the center here. And then when I fold my fabric edges in, it just kind of sticks and holds them down, and I don't have to pin them or try and hold them in so tight. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the other one. Next, I have some 3/8 inch grosgrain ribbon, and I'm going to cover those two raw edges with that grosgrain ribbon and stitch down either side. If I come over it with the iron before I start, if there's anywhere where that Steam-A-Seam is exposed, it'll kind of stick the ribbon to it. And I'm just going to do one right after the other and then cut them off. My handles are finished. I've top stitched either side of the grosgrain ribbon, down each side on both handles. That puts a nice row of top stitching on the outside of the handles as well. I have my basket and my filling all stitched together. My band has been stitched on. Here's all my seam allowances. Okay, and this is the outside of the basket. Now I'm going to look for my seam. Here's my seam. I'm going to put the right side of my handle, that's the side that hasn't got the ribbon on it, against the basket under the seam allowance, right on that seam. Pin it in place. Now my direction page, this little picture right here, shows that the centers of each handle are 6 inches apart. So I'm going to take my tape measure and go 6 inches around my basket and put the other side of my handle again under the seam allowance. Be sure it's not twisted. Pin it. Go an additional 6 inches. Put the other handle, grosgrain side up, right side toward the basket, under the seam allowance. Pin it again. Come around 6 more inches and put the last part of the handle in at 6 inches and pin it. Now that I've got that done, I'm going to check and see how much distance there is right here. Oh yeah, right on, 666 all the way around. Sometimes when I quilt and cut and mess around, it doesn't come out exactly the way I planned, and so I just adjust the handles a little bit to make it work. Now I'm going to turn my band down to cover up my seam allowances and go over my handle, and then I'm going to go through here and I'm going to top stitch all the way around, all along the edge of this band, and that'll catch the handles in there at the same time. Here's how I've got it set up on my machine. Here's the free arm of my machine, the top of my basket, the bottom. Here's my foot, and here's the edge of this band, and I'm just folding the band over. My free arm's right here, and then I'm just stitching all the way around here. Okay, this is the band now that we've stitched down all the way around and caught the handles in it. And if you work around and find where the opening is in that band where you had the finished edge, this is my boning. It kind of reminds me of that strapping cape that comes like on a case of computer paper when you buy it. I got, Joann's has it. I got mine. I live in the Pacific Northwest. I got mine at a shop we have here called Pacific Fabrics. And I'm sure you can also order it online, but it's called boning, B-O-N-I-N-G. I'm going to insert this in that opening, and it just kind of will scoot all the way around there. And eventually you feel it. It's coming back around right now, and I'm going to keep pushing it until it overlaps about that much, because that keeps this from bending right here. And you can kind of maneuver it around a little bit and push it a little bit more. I think, where have I got it? Now I can feel it. It's to like right here. I think I'm going to do it just a little more. Okay. Then once you've got it in there, just take your scissors, cut it off. Be careful not to cut your fabric. And then just push it in a little bit, and now you've got this tight banding in your basket. Now we're almost finished, just a couple of extra finishing steps. I like to turn the handles up over the band and top stitch them right here on my sewing machine. If you catch that boning a little bit, it's okay. It's a garment sewing product, and if you sew through it, it's not going to damage or hurt your needle. But I'd still keep it really close to the top. Okay, one of the last things I did was right at the seam line where I'd sewed the casing, I took my seam ripper and opened this up to the seam line, which is why I wanted you to backstitch there. I did the same thing on the top piece. Opened that up. Now at the bottom, I've got a bodkin with my grosgrain ribbon in it, and I'm going to thread that through the bottom all the way around. Boring, huh? But it's coming all the way around. Okay, here we come. Once it comes out, then all you're going to do is cinch up the bottom. This makes the bottom of the basket, but before I tie it off, I test a paper plate in here because I found out that for a 7-inch paper plate, not all 7 inches are the same on paper plates. So I just like to make sure it fits, make sure I don't have to leave this open a little more, or fuss around a little more with the plate. So now I'm going to tie this in a knot, and I'm going to thread the ends back into my seam. Okay, here's the knot in the base where I've threaded it all back in and just pulled the edge of the casing around it so it doesn't show. I ran the ribbon through the top casing, and the thing you want to remember about the ribbon in the top is make sure that it's long enough so that the top can be opened all the way, that you don't have any gathers in it, because you need it to open all the way to be able to put your paper plate full of your goodies in there. After I threaded it through, I put a couple of beads on it, tied a knot in the end, and made sure the bead wouldn't slip through. Trim these two little ends, and now I can pull it closed. And there I have my goodie basket. Okay, I also want to show you that you can use your basket as well as a carrier. When you get where you're going, you can stuff the little top down on the inside, set your cookie plate or your dessert plate in it, and then you have a really cute little serving device. So hope this helped. Hope you like the pattern. When you get one finished, take your picture and send it to me. As always, I love to see what you've made from my patterns. Bye.